All right, I'm calling the 2022 Town of Albany School Meeting to order. Can you please all rise and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome everyone. I'm going to try and zip through these rules. These are the rules that I'm going to be using for the town meeting and as well as the school board meeting. They're the same rules I've been using for years and that Court used last year when he graciously subbed in for me. The rules are: when speaking, please state your name when recognized. All comments should go through the moderator. I'll recognize one speaker at a time. Please give your name when recognized. Be courteous when speaking. Do not address any comments to any other individuals. Speaker should confine comments to 2 minutes. Speaker should only speak to the topic on the floor and should not discuss other issues. And we have an agreement, as in the past, that non-residents shall be allowed to speak, but they will just identify that they're a non-resident. With respect to amendments, all amendments need to be in writing except in the budget. If you request a secret ballot, which I don't anticipate tonight, if you request a secret ballot, it must be in writing, signed by 5 voters. Once an article is voted on, there will be no further discussion on that issue unless new information is revealed. A motion to call the question should be made only after all sides have had an opportunity to state their position and requires a 2/3 vote. Each article requires a motion and a second for discussion. There is a statute that was enacted 3 years ago, I believe, that requires the clerk to take the name of the person who makes the motion and second, so please bear with us and state your name if you're making the motion or the second so it can be recorded. Each amendment also requires a motion and a second. Procedurally, I'll read the warrant, then ask for a motion and a second and open it up for a discussion. If there is discussion, lengthy discussion, I'll read the warrant again and then ask for a vote on. If there's not lengthy discussion, I'll just ask for a vote on the warrant. You may overrule any of those rules that I just stated, but does anyone have any problem with any of those rules? Okay. We will proceed on with the school meeting. The first 5 articles in the school meeting are with respect to new positions. And so Article 1, to elect a moderator. Ed Alkali was elected 53 votes. To elect a clerk, Article 2. Ann Merrow received 4 votes. Maxine Lee Booth received 1 vote. Jess Tilton received 1 vote. So Ann Merrow won that race. However, put an asterisk next to that, and I'll tell you why when we get to the treasurer. Article 3, to elect 1 school board member for 3 years. Tim Sargi was elected for 3 years with 43 votes. And to elect 1 member of the school board for the ensuing 1 year, Curtis Coleman was elected with 51 votes. And finally, Article 5, to elect a treasurer for the ensuing year. Ann Merrow received 8 votes, and Megan Bailey received 1 vote. So the asterisk that I referred to before is I don't believe that Ann can be both clerk and treasurer, so we'll have to talk to her about that, and the ultimate decision as to who the clerk and the treasurer will be is to be decided. Next, Article 6. To see if the school district will vote, and by the way, if you have the budget, the budget is on page 87 of the book. Article 6, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,712,823 for the support of schools, for payment of salaries for school district officials and agents, and for the payment of statutory obligations of the district with $10,500 offsetting this amount from various grants. This article does not include appropriations voted in other warrant articles. And this is recommended by the school board 3-0. Do I have a motion to bring it to floor? John Eastman made the motion, and do I have a second? Kelly Robitel seconded that. I'll allow the school board or Superintendent Richard to discuss, to raise any issues if they have any, and otherwise I will open it up to the floor. Anything up here? Any questions? Stan Solomon.
Thank you. First, let me express my thanks to this board. I have nothing but admiration for the efforts that they've made for our community and the work that they put behind it and the sincerity of how they conducted themselves. But I do have a few questions, and I hope that these questions will not be taken as criticism, but rather as a vehicle for contemplation and discussion. Having said that, I'm going to ask my first question. On, see if I can find it. Okay. Well, on my second stint on this board, being a participant of this board and working with many of these members, we were on a committee that was created to discuss a contract or modifications to the contract or alternative to the contract with the Conway School Board. The committee was formed and a motion was made to reject the cooperative district that you discussed. Can you tell me why it was rejected? Why that, unanimously, by the way, by all the sending districts and Conway, rejected the proposition that we form a cooperative school board? And I'm just curious to know why it was so unanimously rejected.
So you're correct that a committee, a motion or an amendment was made for us to look into a cooperative school district. That committee was formed and Mark Council was elected as the chairperson for the committee. We had 6 or 8 meetings.
Yeah.
And it became obvious after a while, and this was all done under the, I don't want to say supervision, but with the guidance of Matt Upton, who is an attorney, and he basically, this is what he does. He does a lot of school contracts, tuition agreements, maintenance agreements, and cooperatives. It was realized towards the end of the process that the cooperative was not going to be a good option for the sending towns and for Conway up here. The biggest reason was most cooperatives are formed when a school is going to be built. But because there's an existing structure in Conway and Conway owns that building, the big obstacle was, how is that building going to be dispersed? And are the sending towns going to own part of it? Or are they going to lease it from Conway? And there was a lot of different feelings about that. As everybody here knows, the formula for sending the kids to the school and how we pay for them is equalized value and ADM, basically the number of kids that go to school from the towns. There's a big disparity in the value of the properties with the sending towns. So for some towns, it was more beneficial for them to say, lease the school and the facilities and everything in it from Conway, whereas others wanted to purchase it, and if and when it ever gets sold, that money would be dispersed, you know, to the towns that owned it. So there was just a lot of disparity, and we came to the understanding that a cooperative agreement would have been just too cumbersome to try to get done in the short amount of time. The good news is that there were 4 or 5 other alternatives to that, and it was agreed upon that the same committee would reconvene looking at some of these other options that are on the table there that would be a little bit more feasible for Conway as the host town and the rest of us as sending towns.
Was one of those options considering joining SAU 13?
So that's a different issue, but the cooperative school discussion was only about the high school because the high school is the only building that all the sending towns have in common.
Well, in relation to just Albany, is the Albany committee considering one option would be to join SAU 13?
Yes.
We have so few students and they have so few students. It seems to me appropriate and cost effective if we looked into joining SAU 13 and perhaps negotiating with the high school, with the Conway High School, with greater cohesion.
So if you recall, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, a subcommittee to the school board was formed called the ASOC, Albany School Options Committee. And I serve on that committee, as does Dan, and a few other people. And what we did was we went around to the different schools in the area to see what type of reaction there is to them accepting the Albany school kids. And you know how much it would entail. Would we be able to transport the kids there? What would the cost be of that? So we spoke to the Waldorf School, which has since left where it was up on, what's that called, Lovejoy Lane now or something? Yeah. It was renamed? Okay, so it was up there. We spoke to them, but they have since folded tent and moved on. We spoke to MSAD 72 over in Freiburg, the Molly Orchid School, which is a feeder school to Freiburg Academy. So if we got involved with them, the kids from here could conceivably go to Freiburg Academy.
But you haven't gotten involved with SAU 13 at all.
Well, you didn't let me finish, Stan. I was going to say that.
Hey,
So,
Stan, and Tim.
Yeah.
I have no problem if you're having the cordial, just speak
I'll
through me.
I'll address the chair if I have.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'll go ahead, Chair.
okay. So we also at that time had gone down and we spoke to the old superintendent of SAU 13. And that has since changed over, I think, a couple times, hasn't it? Yeah. Meredith came in, and that now it's Dr. Mike Whalen. So I actually had a conversation with him just last week, and so they are going to put us on their agenda to go down and talk to them about this. But also at the same time, we're meeting with 2 members of the Conway School Board to see if Conway is open to changing some of the language in the tuition agreement that we have with them. I think everybody will agree that that tuition agreement, all the ones we have, kind of favor Conway. But right now, as you said, Stan, with enrollment decreasing in some of these schools, it's kind of a buyer's market. So they are looking for kids to fill their seats, and we're doing the best we can to go around and find the best deal for Albany. One of the biggest concerns that we've run into, though, and I try to talk to people when I'm out and about, is changing schools for kids is a huge thing. Even just going from a grammar school to a middle school to the high school can be tough for them. But plucking every kid out of your school district and saying, okay, now you're going to Tamworth, and it's a very different dynamic for them. And then they'd end up coming back here for high school anyway, which is because SAU 13 sends their kids here to high school. But they're going to be looking at their own issues as well. They may end up going to Governor Wentworth or somewhere down that's even closer to them on the more southern or the western side of things. So there's kind of a lot of moving pieces to this. But we're doing our best to get a handle on it, and ultimately we will have to come back to you guys next year with a recommendation, and then you would vote on it. We have to give Conway a 3-year window, and the contracts are up in 2026 for K-8, 2027 for 9 through 12.
They have to be notified in advance,
3 years.
and if 2026, if that contract is up in 2026.
For,
I'm sorry.
It's okay, if you're being cordial, I don't have any problem,
I just
it's
want
fine, it's
clarification.
fine.
yeah, for the grade school and for the middle school, it's 2026. It's 2027 for the high school because at the time the contracts were signed, the high school wasn't built yet.
That's when the contract is up.
Correct.
And 2023 is when we have to make a decision regarding the elementary school
And the middle school,
and the middle school.
Correct.
2024,
for the high school.
the high school.
Yes, sir.
I have another question.
Does anyone else have a question? And if not, I'll let Stan ask his next question. Back to you, Stan.
Okay. Item number 13 on the budget, under the heading psychological services. I'd like to know, in view of the fact that the increase in that service has gone up from $100 to $2,300, which represents, according to what I see here, a 2,100% increase. Can you justify that for us?
I'd like
Go
to
ahead, Kevin.
answer that. I can't.
Then to Richard.
So that is tied directly to students with IEPs, individualized educational plans, students with special education. So throughout the budget, under special education, Pam Stimson works with the team at the schools and even the preschools. And if it's written into the IEP, that team placement, then those services have to be planned for. So we don't write plans in anticipation of services. It's what is in the child's IEP. So this could be a student who recently moved into the district. It could be a student who is preschool age eligible, which is grade 3 years old and up. So those services are written into a child's IEP.
Is that a residential IEP that we're talking about?
Not for $2,200, no.
No, you're right. So this is just strictly for an IEP?
The services related to a child's IEP, correct,
This is strictly for services related to an IEP?
correct.
And for those who don't know what an IEP is, an individual education plan,
Correct.
which we've been struggling with for quite some time because they've never really been evaluated, have they?
That could be part of this process here.
Is an evaluation to follow?
It could be, yes.
I'm skeptical. I'm sorry. There's also another item on the speech services of a 94.23% increase. Can you justify that?
That would be the same thing. So that is services related to a child's IEP. So again, remember, it could be a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old child who has those services written into their IEP. All of those are tied directly to children's IEPs.
Okay. The other issue is I read Kevin Carpenter's report, and he indicates he has some students with some serious psychological problems. And you guys hired a psychologist and a sociologist or whatever. You hired a lot of people to serve, and I know when I was on the board, I expressed the idea that a way we handled discipline was unfair. And it was unfair to the children, but I had no idea that we were going to go into a psychiatric and sociological business. I had something in mind like sensitivity training, a program that we can surely initiate rather than a punitive approach to discipline. We can take that sort of approach to discipline, but I had no idea it was an invitation to invite psychiatrists and sociologists and others into this as an individual as an individual approach to our special ed program. I know the IEPs are individual approaches, and I'm skeptical whether they work or not, but here we're only doubling down. And I'm not sure we have the wherewithal or even the institutions that can deal with the kind of problem that Kevin outlined in his report. Can you respond to that?
So the high school did hire a social worker this year. We did receive some federal dollars to help navigate through the pandemic. So there is a social worker at the high school, and that's being paid for through the COVID relief funds, if you will. And, you know, hopefully it's a short-term piece, but it is in place at the high school.
Do you have a mechanism to evaluate it? No, it seems to me that we have a tendency to just initiate things and they just sort of fade away. No one evaluates them. And they're put in a closet, and then someone down the line just takes them out of the closet and brushes them off, and it costs us a lot more money, even though the product program may not work. My question is you to have a mechanism to evaluate what's going on in the high school?
There are a number of mechanisms. I mean, part of what the social worker is doing is trying to find the root of the problem, right? And you know that, Stan. You can't treat just a symptom. You have to take a look deeper at that, right? So the first thing you have to do is find out what are those issues that are causing those behaviors. And I think that's what the social worker is trying to do this year in meeting with the students throughout the year.
I was still wondering whether we just continue, even if the program fails, to produce any positive results. You know, we still have the same problems with all of these people that we're bringing in to help these kids, and the problem is still exists because it hasn't been evaluated, and we have to pay. Is this a continuing process that the taxpayers have to pay for?
Let me jump in, Stan, and let me just ask this to Superintendent Richard, and tell me if this is wrong, but I think what Stan is asking is how is this ultimately evaluated, and is there any end in sight, if you know?
Well, I think it's constantly evaluated by the administration. It's constantly evaluated, can we keep students in our schools, right? That's number one. That's our ultimate goal, right? And the proof is in keeping those students in school. These students have had a tough time over the past 2 years. And what we want to do is, we aren't going to fix it with just adding a person in the building. That is, you are absolutely right. It's bigger than that. But this person hopefully will help get the students and the families the resources that they need, begin to try and develop the programming that they need so that they can be successful.
Does anyone else have any questions other than Stan right now? Okay. Stan, do you have anything else?
Yeah,
Okay. All right. I'm going to reread Article 6 and then ask for a vote on that. Article 6, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,712,823 for the support of schools, for payment of salaries for school district officials and agents, and for the payment of statutory obligations of the district, with $10,500 offsetting this amount from various grants. This article does not include appropriations voted on in other warrant articles. All those in favor of Article 6? All those opposed? Article 6 passes. Article 7, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,000 to be placed in the Capital Reserve Fund Special Education previously established for this purpose, recommended by the school board 320. Do I have a motion to bring it to the floor? John Eastman moves and Buzz Coleman seconds. Any comments, questions on Article 7?
Yeah, sorry, I do have another question.
That's okay, Stan. That's why we're here.
What are we doing on line 6? Article 7, line 26 of the budget, on the capital reserve.
Hold on.
This is 15,000 for the capital reserve.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
This is 46 on the capital reserve. Do we have anything left in the capital reserve?
Yes. There's currently $126,187 in there.
And you want another 15,000?
Well, it's not something that we want. We kind of lean on Pam Stimson and Kevin in terms of where we should be at for that reserve fund. It is dedicated to special ed, as most of the people, if not everybody here, remembers. 3 or 4 years ago, we had a big jump in a special ed situation for an Albany student, and our taxes all went up 30-something%, and that was basically the reason for it. So special ed is something that has to be dealt with and paid for in real time. It's not something that we pay for from 2 years ago or a year ago. When it happens and the expenditure is there, we have to deal with it right away. So they do this with all the sending towns, as well as with Conway, is they want to keep that expenditure fund at a good number so that we don't get hit with that huge spike in our tax rate for that particular year to deal with that. You want to add something?
Kevin, can you go ahead?
So a couple of things. So that's $73,341. Last year at this meeting, there was an article on your warrant that dissolved the tuition contract. In what it did was, it was written so that that money in the tuition contract was added to the Special Education Trust Fund. So prior to last year, because of the year, I think it was 2016, where not only did you drain the Special Education Trust Fund, you also had a deficit article on your warrant. So it was really down to about $50,000 prior to last year. So that $73,000 was taken from your tuition trust fund, because you don't really have to use that because of the way the tuition contracts are. You're paying on a known number of students because it was a year ago's students. So that's why that number, $73,341, was added to that account. It was dissolved from the tuition trust fund and added to your special education trust fund. And yes, they are still looking at adding $15,000 to it.
And Stan, that's a pretty conservative total dollar amount for this. We were definitely kept it on the low end from what it could be. So it was, I mean, there was talk of $250,000 that we might want to have in there as total, so.
Any other comments on Article 7? Okay, well, I'll just ask for a vote on that. We all know what it's about. All those in favor of Article 7? All those opposed? Article 7 passes. And Article 8, to transact any other business. This is for general comments about the schools, the school districts. Any comments or questions for Superintendent Richard or any of the school board members? Kelly.
Is there any conversation on addressing the pickup and drop-off at Conway Elm for the students? I sometimes I do the pickup, and I could be parked almost out onto the main road waiting in line. the parents up front tend to lollygag, I guess you call it, with their kids, and it's a single lane, it's a double lane, it feeds into a single lane, and it turns a corner, and it's could 20 minutes, sometimes longer, to pick up a child. So I didn't know if I know they did this new this year, and I didn't know if there was any discussion on it.
It has been addressed a few times. I know that we were without a crossing guard for a period of time. I know when they aren't there, obviously, it becomes a little bit more congested. I think a few different things. One is, it was really quick for a period of time. People were dropping off, and now I think it could probably be tightened up a little bit more, because it kind of ebbs and flows as
Yeah,
well.
it's inside parking
Yeah.
lot, you know, it's at the
Yeah.
main pickup.
Yeah. No, I'll take a look at that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other comments, questions for either the school board members or Superintendent Richard? Tim?
Just wanted to say something quick since you brought up transportation. We did change transportation companies, and we got into a new 5-year contract with Tim Eldridge, who already services Madison and Eaton, maybe, or no?
I think it's Madison.
Just Madison. And we were able to save about $5,000 a year on that from what the old bus company was going to be charging us going forward. Tim came in with a very, very fair price, and Jim Hill from the SAU was very instrumental in working with us and him to do that. So if you see the Eldridge buses, that's why. It's something new.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, the Albany School District meeting is hereby closed. So we'll take a minute to switch places, and then we'll go right into the town meeting. Thank you, everyone. Hey, settle down. We're going to call the Town of Albany meeting to order.
She needs to sit.
So the first order of business under the town meeting is to elect all necessary officials. I'll read the town election results. Town moderator with 22 votes is me at Alkali. Selectman for 3 years is Jennifer Spofford with 43 votes. Also receiving 1 vote each is Kelly Robitel, Keith Croto, and Rick Highland. The selectman position for 1 year is Kelly Robitel with 48 votes. Receiving 1 vote was Chip Henry, and 1 vote for Joe Ferris. For town clerk, Sandra Vizard won the election with 48 votes. For treasurer, for 2 years, Kathy Carrier won with 47 votes. For cemetery trustee, Colleen Cormack won with 2 votes. Also receiving 1 vote each was Kathy Ryan and Maxine Black. Cemetery trustee for 2 years, Colleen Cormack also won that with 2 votes, and Ann Merrow received 1 vote. Obviously, Colleen can't fill both positions, so it's going to have to be worked out as to who is going to be the other cemetery trustee. Trustee of the trust fund for 3 years, Colleen Cormack with 3 votes. Sean Wadsworth received 1, and Ann Merrow received 1. Trustee of the trust fund for 2 years, Megan Bailey won that with 1 vote. 1 vote makes a difference in this town. Supervisor of the checklist, 6 years, Paula Vaughn won that hotly contested race with 8 votes. Cindy Barnacote finished second with 2, and Lance Zach received 1. But fret not, Cindy, because you won the supervisor of the checklist for 1 year with 9 votes, defeating Paula Vaughn, who only received 2 votes for that one. So those are the town election results. Okay, moving on to Article 2. As in the last few years, I'm going to open up the entire budget for full discussion after I read it. I'll give everyone a couple of minutes to look over the town budget. I am working from page 5, 6, 7, etc. For this meeting, and the budget starts on page 7. So Article 2 states, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $751,483 for the municipal operating budget for the ensuing year. This article does not include appropriations contained in special or individual articles addressed separately and is recommended by the Selectmen 3-0. Do I have a motion to bring it to the floor? Buzz Coleman makes the motion. Kathy Carrier seconds the motion. I will give everyone a couple of minutes to look over the budget, or a minute maybe. A minute should do it. And it's, again, pages 7 through 11. I don't want to rush anybody, but I'm going to open up for discussion, and you can continue looking at the budget. Does anyone have any comments or questions on the budget? This may be a first in the history of Albany. Okay, I am going to ask for a vote on Article 2 to approve the budget that I just read. All those in favor? All those opposed? Miracles happen. Anyway, I enjoy the discussions. Article 3, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,000 for the deposit into the Drake Hill Road Bridge Expendable Trust Fund, recommended by Selectmen 3-0. Do I have a motion to bring to the floor? John Eastman so moves, Curtis Coleman seconds. Comments or questions on Article 3?
I'll just say that's the, we're just putting money into that fund so that when, if the state grant money comes, we'll have the matching, enough matching funds to be able to do it. Because if you don't have the money, you can't do it, so.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? All those in favor of Article 3? All those opposed? Article 3 passes. Article 4, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,500 for deposit into the Revaluation Expendable Trust Fund previously established, recommended by Selectmen 3-0. Do I have a motion to bring to the floor? Buzz Coleman moves, Dan Bianchino seconds. Comments, questions on Article 4? All those in favor of Article 4? All those opposed? Article 4 passes. Article 5, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $60,000 for deposit into the Highway Expendable Trust Fund previously established, recommended by Selectmen 3-0. Do I have a motion to bring to the floor? Buzz Coleman moves, Dan Bianchino seconds. Comments, questions on Article 5? Tim?
What is the difference between this money's, the 60, and the 100 in the next article, Article 6? Like, what's the differentiation between those, the expenditures of those monies?
Curtis? Well, so this will be, this is just the expendable trust fund that we just put in, that down the road we'll use for special projects or paving that we can pull from. The next one is specifically appropriating money for a specific project within that year. Right?
I guess the intention is not to spend on the first one unless necessary.
Right.
The second one would be this year's spending.
So, can I just?
Kelly, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. It's more a time frame thing. The 60,000 is going into the capital reserve fund, and then the 100,000 is for this year's operating budget paving. Last year, the Board of Selectmen took 250,000 out of the capital reserve fund and put it with 100,000 and did $349,000 worth of paving. So we're trying to get kind of caught up on, I think there was some discussion last year about maybe bonding some paving, but rather than borrowing and paying interest, the board decided to continue to put money into the capital reserve fund for paving, but also to have some operating budget money. And then last year, it worked out really well because during COVID, the state didn't do a lot of paving, so we were able to get a really good price on a really good company, and Curtis got a ton of paving done for a really good price.
Does that answer your question, Kim?
Indeed, it does.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on Article 5? Okay, all those in favor of Article 5? All those opposed? Article 5 passes. Article 6, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 for the purpose of continuing the maintenance and pavement of Albany town roads, with $50,000 to come from the December 31st, 2021 unassigned fund balance, recommended 3-0. Do I have a motion to bring to the floor? It's Tim Osorgi will move, and Dan Pianchino seconds. Comments, questions, Article 6?
So some of this, you know, we were way under budget on our normal municipal highway streets. So a lot of this is coming from that unassigned balance. So we were like, around $50,000 under budget from last year on our highways and streets. So that's why we're just using that 50.
So we haven't been audited yet, but right now it's 53,000 that we didn't spend. But that includes the whole highway operating budget, like winter operations, summer operations, paving, everything. So the board decided to, rather than let that just sit in unassigned fund balance and potentially use it to reduce taxes later, to put it back towards paving, which is where it was budgeted for.
Any other comments, questions, Article 7?
6.
Sorry, 6. Any other comments, Article 6? All those in favor of Article 6? All those opposed? Article 6 passes. Article 7, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,000 to be added to the Chapel Capital Reserve Fund previously established, recommended 3-0. Do I have a motion to bring to the floor? Buzz Coleman's moves. Noah Coleman seconds. Comments, questions on Article 7? All those in favor of Article 7? All those opposed? Article 7 passes. Article 8, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $6,000 to be added to the Town Hall Property Capital Reserve Fund previously established, recommended by the Selectmen and the CIP Committee. Do I have a motion to bring to the floor? Buzz Coleman moves. John Eastman seconds. Comments, questions on Article 8? All those in favor of Article 8? All those opposed? Article 8 passes. Article 9, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,000 to be added to the Emergency Management Capital Reserve Fund previously established. Recommended 3-0. I have a motion to bring to the floor. Buzz Coleman moves. Dan Bianchino seconds. Comments, questions on Article 9? Now, this is the article that we're going to have a 50-minute discussion on, I have a feeling. All those in favor of Article 9? All those opposed? Article 9 passes. So I'm going to propose to do Articles 10 through 16 together. So take a second to just look at it, and if anybody opposes that, I will not do that, but these are generally ones that are discussed together every year. Does anyone have a problem if we discuss all of those together? Okay, so I'm going to read all of them, then I'll ask to move all of them for discussion and approval for all of them. Article 10, and all of these are by petition. Article 10, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,000 for the Family Resource Center at Children Unlimited. Article 11, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,700 for operation of Tri-County Community Action Program Incorporated, service programs in Albany, transportation, energy assistance, weatherization, guardianship, Head Start, homeless intervention and prevention, disaster relief, and Tamworth Dental Center. Article 12, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,000 to support Albany home-delivered meals, Meals on Wheels, congregate meals, transportation, and program services provided by the Gibson Center for Senior Services. Article 13, to see if the town of Albany will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,700 in support of the operations of Valley Vision Channel 3, the public education and government station in 2021. Broadcast Albany municipal meetings on Channel 3 is included, subject to permission of the Town of Albany Select Board. Our Article 14, to respectfully request that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,965 in support of Starting Point, providing advocacy and support to victims of domestic and sexual violence and their children. Article 15, to see if the town of Albany will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,958 for the support of White Mountain Community Health Center to help meet the health care needs of the uninsured and underinsured residents of the town of Albany. And Article 16, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,000 for the Conway Area Humane Society for the purpose of supporting continuing services for stray, abandoned, or other animals brought to the shelter. Do I have a motion to bring all of those to the floor? Buzz Coleman moves, John Eastman seconds. Any comments, questions on Articles 10 through 16? Tim?
So on Article 10, what exactly is the Family Resource Center at Children Unlimited? I know on the school board we get invoices from them on a regular basis, so we are paying to that. I'm just curious what the Family Resource Center is.
From what I understand, it's a facility for
children with special needs.
No, I understand
Why it's that much?
But what is the Family Resource Center? Is that something within Children Unlimited, or is that just Children Unlimited? That's what it's known as.
That's what it's known as. It's within, yeah, it's within, yeah.
So it's something separate from Children Unlimited?
It's just part of the services that Children Unlimited supply to families, is a place where they can go to get information to help them find the resources that they need. But it's a part, it's under the umbrella.
Right, basically the same company.
Yeah.
And it would include children that don't necessarily go to school here. Like they live here, but they don't necessarily go to school here.
Any other comments, questions? Peter?
Yes, Peter Donconis. We've lived here since 1985. Okay, we've done a few meetings, some of which had to go to the high school auditorium because we have so many people. We had fewer people then, but people showed up because we were very concerned about how we spend our money. Because one thing about Albany, we don't make a lot of money in the area. If you live up here in the mountains, that's just a given. So, My comment is that whenever people ask for our money, we didn't want to feel their hands in our pockets. This is their hands and feet in our pockets. And I say that some of this might be very legitimate, but where are their representatives? We usually, good, but we usually had people here, okay, that explain, why do you need this? What this comes down to, and in government nowadays at all levels, they have a formula. They spread us across the valley with other people, particularly Valley Vision. We canceled Valley Vision in the sense of giving them money because nobody was watching it. We don't have an idea how many people are using these services. That's a lot of money in some of these places that really are based upon their budget that they made up without any oversight, and then they divide the money. And how they do it by population or whatever. It really isn't. In the past, we found they just charged us because of the formula. But there's only who's using it. We don't need to know who our neighbors are that are using these services, but they are a number. So when it comes down to spending all this money on maybe a couple people, God bless it, I'm glad there's services available, but there has to be a better way. When in a business, you wouldn't have a blanket for everybody coming through. There would be costs incurred. And the town should, if they want to, they participate. But we're not that sort of society that just depends on towns helping people come knocking at the door. Okay? That the town has to pay all that money. So, just generally, I would say, let's keep it in mind. Nobody's here to talk about these programs, representing them, explaining, oh, we've got 50 people from town that are using our services, et cetera, et cetera. This is a blank, and it's not necessarily legitimate. If they see that we say no, then hopefully somebody will come knocking on the door and the selectmen can deal with it in the sense of saying, okay, guys, this guy, this old head got up and talked about how he used to come, and we're really, wondering, where did you get your figures? And how many people do we have that really need those services? This is a rough time. So there are a lot of people trying to need more services than usual. But at the same time, it's our money. It's not the vast. And we're not making as much as we should be able to. Okay? So as my neighbors, I'd like you to consider I am voting against it. Not because I don't want to give a lift, help a neighbor by getting a job or, I don't give out money. I help people live their lives. That's the generation I grew up in. Because we didn't have politics either. So, but I appreciate everybody being here and consider what I say. If we say no, does not mean we're son of bitches. It means we're careful about our money and respect our town.
Thank you, Peter. Kelly.
First of all, I will say that the town meeting does hold these agencies responsible because part of what you passed 3 or 4 years ago is that they have to provide their nonprofit status. They have to provide me with 2 years of their IRS 990. They have to give us a list of the number of families and people in Albany that they service. Obviously, there's no way to check that because it's confidential. But I trust them to be honest about it because if we find out they're lying, then they won't get our support. As the welfare officer for the town, I think it's important that we support these agencies because if I had to provide this service, even one individual service for rate counseling, for Meals on Wheels, this town couldn't afford to even provide one. We'd have to have infrastructure. These agencies, this is what they do, and it's all they do, and they do it fairly well. I don't disagree with Mr. Don Conix that they should have to explain what they're using the money for, but they do. And if anybody, that documentation has to come in with the petition, and I have it all in my office for every year that it's been required. So if anybody wants to review it, they're welcome to. They can't get on the warrant without that information, and you, as a town meeting, voted to do that and require that. So we do have a lot of information on these agencies and what they do, and how many families and individual people they service in the town.
Thank you. Sean?
Is that information public?
It is, because it has no names.
Just the numbers?
Yeah.
Could that information be in next year's town report? Just the numbers?
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
We could talk about that.
yeah, I mean, it would be 10 more pages of the town report, which costs us money to print, and, but even if I did it as a handout at town meeting, I'm willing to do that. I mean, if somebody wants to see it, I can provide it. Again, it's a requirement to even get on the warrant, so I have it all. And honestly, very few of these went up very much at all. They're trying to hold their costs because they understand that people don't have discretionary funds right now.
It sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, that Sean's interested in, being able to see it. I mean, we don't often come here, but he wants to see the underlying information, and if they're not here, it might be helpful for everyone. I don't necessarily think many people are against this, but it sounds like there is some interest in seeing the underlying information. So.
Would you be okay with just like one additional page with each of the agencies and the number of families and individuals they serviced in the preceding year? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions, Articles 10 through 16? Yes?
Can I respond to the?
Yeah, of course, of course.
I gotta make sure I'm.
Don't turn the camera off, though.
I'm not gonna try. Get the wide angle. So I want to answer a couple of questions. I think, I didn't quite hear everything you said, because you.
Oh, okay.
So that's all right. So a couple of things about Valley Vision. The amount of money, the $2,700, is what the town of Albany gets from franchise fees. So there's no tax dollars involved, none. If you don't have cable TV, you don't pay a nickel of this $2,700. It only comes from people who pay, who have cable television. The town of Albany gets, I believe it's a 3% amount of every cable bill. So if you have cable television, 3% of the money you pay for cable goes back into the town, and it comes to something roughly $2,700 or so. So that's generally the amount of money that we put in for a warrant article, and the reason for that is it was determined several years ago by the town of Conway. The town of Conway is responsible for Channel 3 and Valley Vision. Its existence is because of the town of Conway. And for other towns to view it, like Freiburg, Albany, and Bartlett, the town has asked that they also contribute some of the franchise fee money in order to view it, so that the town of Conway effectively isn't paying the whole load. Conway's, the amount of money generated from franchise fees from Conway is, obviously vastly larger than Freiburg or Albany or Bartlett. And so they've asked that, they determined that the number that they wanted to see each town contribute was $5,000 a year. But Albany's franchise fee allotment is less than $5,000, so thus they've asked for $2,700, and that's where we put that amount of money in. Does that make sense? Yep. So again, no tax dollars, none. Yep.
Peter?
I appreciate your comment, okay? But it also shows it's not done on actual usage of that channel and the information. At one time, Valley Vision, when it started, was very important in terms of information, broadcasting, meetings, everything else. And now, in this day and age, it is, in my opinion, really lost a lot of its advantage. And that's what we've done in previous years. when the head of Valley Vision come in one time, a group of us in the office, was told, you don't have the people that watch you. And we appreciate you have expenses, but you're doing it on a formula and a percentage. And that just goes, it's going,
No.
where am I wrong?
No, I'm
You just said that though, so.
Okay, hold on.
I don't want to
Just-
extend this beyond
Yeah.
useful time.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. Are you done, Peter? Are you done? Okay, go ahead.
I'm not sure where you're coming up with the, I better.
Yeah.
I won't get into discussion. What's that?
I'm not being good. You said you get 5,000, from these towns, and we got blessed because we're small.
Right, we didn't come up with the formula. Valley Vision doesn't determine that formula. That's the town of Conway.
Yes.
As far as usage goes, I'm not entirely sure where you're getting it's no longer relevant or valid. Are you privy to statistics that I'm not?
Okay,
No,
let's not, hold on.
No, we want to get into that,
Yeah.
into the weeds. That's just talking with people in the town, other things, and our own personal use and so forth. It is not scientific, okay? But when you tell me each town is going to be assessed so much, it doesn't seem like it's based on population. There have been some times in the past where we have actually, for our size, we're paying a lot because of what Conway wanted, you see. That's all. It's simple. It's not a knock on you folks.
No, I appreciate that. It is based on population, though. It's based on population because it's directly tied to the number of people in a given town who get cable television. So it's entirely proportionate.
Right.
So it is based on population.
Any other, thank you. Any other comments, Articles 10 through 16? Okay, I'm going to ask globally for Articles 10 through 16. All those in favor of passing Articles 10 through 16? All those opposed? Articles 10 through 16 pass. Okay, and Article 17 to act on any further business. This is kind of the general business. Anybody have any comments in general?
I think we should just recognize a few people. Kathy Golding has stepped up a lot this year. We've got a lot of turnover in the last year and a half. We got some familiar faces that are back. Sandy Bernard's back, Kaylin, and Kelly's back, and he's stepped up. We have a new face on as well. Kelly, town administrator, has been here a few years now, and it seems like everybody's really worked together in the town in the last year and a half or so, and they've worked really hard. A lot of people kind of new at it and whatnot, but they're doing a good job, so I think they should be appreciated for that.
Thank you, Curtis.
Thanks, Curtis.
Peter?
I'd just like to add, everything you've said, we can say about Holden. Okay, no, we're very fortunate, not only to have people that are involved and can take care of our infrastructure needs and other things, but they are good neighbors and good members, citizens of this country and this town. After you folks move out, retire, the town will have a lot less.
No, we're not going anywhere. So.
Yeah, good. How are your children? Make sure they're good. But anyway, thank you very much to all.
Any other comments or questions? The 2022 town meeting is hereby closed.
Wow.
8:09.